across the quiet street as he dropped her suitcase at the bus stop. His sister filmed it all. His mother laughed from the car. They threw her out like trash, never once asking what she'd walked away from to marry him. Terence Bishop stood on the curb in his good coat and watched his wife hold a 6-day-old baby against the cold. Brielle Adams sat in the passenger seat of his car, filing her nails, smiling at the windshield like a woman who had already won. Loretta Bishop rolled her window down just far enough to say, "Don't make a scene, it's unbecoming." Then the car pulled away. Aaliyah did not cry. She looked down at her daughter. She reached into her bag and touched the one thing she had carried out of that house. A sealed cream envelope, soft at the edges from years of holding, never once opened. She had promised her father she would open it only on the worst day of her life. She held it. She did not open it, not yet. He had no idea the woman he was throwing into the storm was the one who quietly held everything he was chasing. Emotional drama and shocking twists, don't forgettable stories. And before we begin, Terence had not always been this cruel. 6 years earlier, he was a tired young associate who could not afford the coffee he bought her. Aaliyah had money then, more than he could dream. She never told him. She wanted just once to be chosen for the woman she was, and not for the name folded away in that envelope. So she called herself Aaliyah Rowe. She wore plain dresses. She let him believe she was ordinary. And he loved her. That part was real in the beginning. She remembered the night he proposed. No ring yet. He could not afford one. He got down on the wet floor of a laundromat while their clothes spun behind the glass, and he said, "I don't have anything to give you, just me and everything I'm going to become." She took his face in her hands. She said, "That's all I ever wanted." She meant it more than he would ever know. She remembered another night later when he had a fever and she stayed up wiping his forehead with a cloth. He caught her wrist and looked at her like she was the only steady thing in the world. "You're too good for me," he whispered. She laughed and said, "Then rise up to me." She had no idea he would hear those words as a challenge instead of a promise. She gave things up for him. She left the city where everyone knew her father. She turned down a seat on a board that carried her family name. She let the Sinclair phone go silent in a drawer. She told herself love outweighed all of it. Terence rose. She helped him rise. She proofread his briefs at 2 a.m. She smiled through dinners with partners who mattered, and slowly the man got hungry, and the hunger ate the parts of him she had loved. The Bishops never warmed to her. Loretta touch Aaliyah's homemade dress between 2 fingers and say, "Sweet, but not exactly a career, is it?" Danielle would ask loud at every dinner, "What is it your family does again?" And Aaliyah would only smile and pass the bread. Then a name started coming up. Brielle from the firm. Brielle who understood the deal. The calls ran late. There was a photo from a work retreat where a woman stood too close, her hand flat on Terence's back. Aaliyah saw it. She said nothing. She was 7 months pregnant and still hoping. The envelope sat in her drawer. She kept ignoring it. She thought of her father every time she looked at it. Arthur Sinclair had been a mountain of a man with a soft voice. He built Sinclair Holdings from a single storefront, and he never once made her feel like his fortune was a cage. When she told him she wanted to disappear, to be loved as a nobody, he did not argue. He only held her hand and said he understood. She was at his bedside at the end. He was thin by then, the mountain worn down to bedrock. He asked the nurse to leave them. He reached under his pillow with a shaking hand and took out the cream envelope. He pressed it into her palm and closed both her hands around it with both of his. "Listen to me," he said. "You wanted to be loved plain. I gave you that. But the world is not always kind to a woman it thinks has nothing." He tapped the envelope. "This is not money. It is more than money. It is proof of who you are. You keep it sealed. You do not open it for a good day. You open it on the day someone tries to erase you." She was crying. He was not. "Promise me," he said, "when they make you feel like nothing, you open this and you remember whose daughter you are." She promised. He smiled like a man who had finished his last piece of business, and he closed his eyes for the last time an hour later, her hand still wrapped around his gift. That was the memory she carried out of the house 6 years later, standing at a bus stop with a newborn and a suitcase, while a car full of laughing people drove away. She had the baby alone. Terence was closing a deal in another city. 6 days later, he put her out. The morning after the bus stop, Aaliyah did not wait for anyone to rescue her. She rented the cheapest room she could find, laid her daughter in a drawer lined with a folded blanket, and opened Terence's old laptop that she had grabbed on her way out the door. She knew his passwords. She had typed them 100 times, proofreading his work at midnight. She did not open the envelope. She opened his email instead. That was the first thing she noticed that did not add up. Her $14,000. A jeweler downtown, dated 3 weeks before the baby came. She had bought nothing. She called the jeweler herself and read the transaction number. The clerk said, "Yes, ma'am, a diamond pendant, picked up by a Miss Adams." She wrote the name in a notebook, Brielle Adams. She underlined it once. Why was her husband buying jewelry on her account for another woman while she lay in a hospital bed? She did not cry. She kept reading. It was Solomon Grant who found her, not the other way around, her father's lawyer. He had watched over her accounts quietly for years, the way Arthur had asked him to. He knocked on her motel door 2 days later, gray at the temples, calm as still water. "Do not sign anything they send you, not one page. Whatever comes, you bring it to me first." She told him she had already started. She showed him the notebook, the charge, the name, the jeweler's answer. Solomon looked at the page, then at her, and something in his face shifted toward respect. "You found that yourself," he said. "I found more than that," she said. "I'm just getting started." "Then I will do what your father hired me to do," Solomon said. "I will keep you safe, and I will keep you legal, and I will tell you the truth when you ask, but the finding I think you will do better than me." He set a card on the cable. "Call me before you act, never after." That was the arrangement. He was her shield, she was the sword. While Aaliyah dug, Brielle Adams went to work on Terence. She came to his office late after the cleaning crew left and sat on the edge of his desk. "You look tired," she said. "A man carrying a whole firm on his back shouldn't have to carry a scandal, too." She traced the rim of his coffee cup. "That woman is going to come after the baby, and she is going to come after your name. You need to move first, clean, on paper, before she thinks to." Terence rubbed his face. "She's the mother of my child." "She's an anchor," Brielle said, gentle as a knife. She let that sit. "The Sinclair deal is almost yours. Partner is almost yours. Don't let a laundromat girl drag you back down to where I found you." She knew exactly which old wound to press. He nodded. Aaliyah, meanwhile, found the second thread on her own. Digging through Terence's sent folder, she found a memo from his firm forwarded to Brielle. Across the top, one name jumped out and stopped her breath. Sinclair Holdings. She read every line. Terence's whole year had been about one deal. He needed a single company to sign off before it closed. He had been flying out for months, missing dinners, missing the birth of his daughter, all to court that company, her father's firm. She brought it to Solomon not for answers, but to test hers. "This is my father's firm," she said. "Terence has spent a year begging at my family's door, and he doesn't even know it." Solomon nodded slowly. "That is true, and it goes deeper than you have seen yet, but I want you to find the rest. You will believe it more if it comes from your own hand." So she went looking, and she found the account. It was in her name, a bank she had never used, money moving through it in large amounts, in and out, over months. Someone had built a false Aaliyah to make dirty money look clean and pointed it straight at Terence's deal. She traced the authorized contact on the account herself, sitting up until dawn with the baby on her chest. One name kept appearing beside the forged version of her own. Brielle Adams. Why would the other woman tie herself to a fraud in Aaliyah's name, unless the other woman was not after her husband at all? That was the night the whole thing turned. Aaliyah called Solomon at midnight, and for once she was the one delivering news. Brielle isn't after Terrence, she said. She's using him. Everything runs through my name and lands on my father's company. She's not chasing a man, she's chasing the whole empire, and Terrence is just the door she walked through. There was a long silence on the line. Then Solomon said, quietly, "You solved in a week what I feared would take you a year. Your father would be proud." A pause. "And you understand what that makes you in this fight." "The thing they're all reaching for," she said, "and none of them know they already had me in the house." "Open the envelope, Aaliyah," Solomon said. "I think it is time." She held it a long moment. The worst day of her life had come exactly as Arthur promised it might. She opened it. Inside was a letter in her father's hand and a single card. The card named the keeper of the Sinclair Trust, the one person who controlled the company and everything it touched the moment she chose to claim it. Aaliyah Sinclair, sole successor, full control. She pressed the letter to her chest and, for the first time since the bus stop, she let 2 tears fall. Not for Terrence, for the man who knew, even dying, that his daughter would one day need armor and had left it in her hands. Then she wiped her face and got back to work. Brielle sensed the ground shifting before Terrence did. She always did. She came to his apartment the next night with wine and a plan. "Something's wrong," she told him. "I feel her moving. That old lawyer is sniffing around the accounts. We need to close the Sinclair deal now, this week, before anyone looks too hard." She poured his glass. "Sign it, lock it, and once you're partner, no one can touch you. Not her, not anyone." "You keep saying we," Terrence said, half noticing. Brielle smiled and kissed his temple. "Because I'm the only one still on your side." It was the most efficient lie she had ever told, and he drank it down with the wine. But Aaliyah was ready to move, and the antagonists moved harder. Terrence filed for custody. He called her unstable, homeless, unfit. Loretta swore an affidavit that Aaliyah had abandoned the family home. Danielle posted the bus stop video online with a caption calling her a gold digger, which was almost too funny to survive. Loretta came to the motel in person, polite as ever, smoothing her gloves. "Give up the child," she said. "Let my son marry well. Grief does not change reality, dear. You have nothing, and a child deserves everything." Aaliyah poured her a cup of water. "Thank you for being so clear," she said, and set it down without a tremble. She did not scream. She added Loretta's words to the notebook. Then came Terrence's last desperate move. Somehow he learned that Solomon Grant was pulling records. A partner mentioned it, or Brielle's paranoia bled into his. Panicked, Terrence drove to Solomon's office himself. He tried threats first. "You drop this, old man, or I'll have the bar looking into you by Friday." Solomon did not blink. Then he tried money. He slid a check across the desk. "Name a number. Make her disappear quietly. Everyone wins." Solomon folded the check in half and slid it back. "You cannot buy me, but I will tell you something for free because I knew a better version of you once. You are begging at a door, and you have no idea whose house it is." Terrence left shaking. He called Aaliyah for the first time since the curb. His voice was raw. "Whatever you think you have, drop it. Come home. We'll fix this. Don't embarrass me at that gala." He heard his own desperation and hated it. "You had a home," Aaliyah said. "You left it at a bus stop." And she hung up. Solomon met her that night with the folder complete. He said, "It is enough. The Sinclair Foundation Gala is Friday. Every partner from his firm will be there, hoping to meet the successor who controls the deal." He almost smiled. "They are about to." Friday came. Terrence arrived in his best tuxedo, Brielle on his arm, the diamond pendant he had bought with his wife's money resting at her throat. Loretta wore pearls. Danielle brought her phone. They came to charm the Sinclair heir and secure the deal at last. They did not know they had already met her and thrown her out. The room quieted when the host took the stage. "It is my honor," she said, "to introduce the keeper of the Sinclair Trust, the woman whose signature every decision in this company waits upon. Please welcome Miss Aaliyah Sinclair." Aaliyah stepped out, not in a plain dress, in a gown the color of deep water, her daughter's photo pinned over her heart. She crossed the stage while 300 people rose to their feet. Terrence's glass slipped in his hand and shattered on the floor. No one looked at it. She found his face in the crowd. She was calm. "6 days after I gave birth, a man left me at a bus stop. He told me I was nothing. He told me no one would ever know my name." She let the silence stretch. "You know it now." She did not cry. She had never needed to. That was the first peak. She had promised herself a second. She nodded, and Solomon walked to the podium with the folder. On the screens above the ballroom, the fraudulent account bloomed for the whole room to read. The forged signature, the jeweler's receipt, the laundered money running through a fake Aaliyah to make Terrence's deal look clean. "This stopped being a divorce weeks ago," Solomon said. "This is a federal crime, and some of the people in this room tonight are paid to care about that a great deal." 2 of them stood up in the back. Then came the bombshell even Aaliyah had not planned. Brielle Adams, cornered, watching her whole design go up in flame, chose the only move a mastermind ever really has. She saved herself. She ripped the pendant from her neck and threw it at Terrence's chest. "He planned all of it," she said, loud and clear, playing to the room now, to the 2 men in the back. "The eviction. He told me weeks before that baby came that he was going to put her out clean before she could claim a thing. He wrote it down. It's in his emails. I only did what he paid me to do." The room gasped. It was half true and wholly ruinous. Terrence had drafted the eviction while his wife was still pregnant. It was premeditated, in writing, and the woman he had chosen over his family had just handed the proof to a room full of witnesses to save her own neck. His custody case died where he stood. A father who plotted to abandon a newborn does not get to call the mother unfit. A clause in the trust her father had written years before protected her and her daughter completely. Loretta reached for her son's arm. For the first time in his life, Terrence pulled away from his mother. There was nothing polite left to say, and no one left to say it to. Aaliyah did not gloat. She stepped down from the stage, walked through the parting crowd, and went home to her daughter. 1 year later, she stood on a quiet suburban street, the same street. She held a pair of scissors and a blue ribbon in front of a small blue house, the first of many, built on the very spot where a bus stop bench used to sit. It was a home for mothers who had been put out with nothing. She named the whole initiative after Arthur Sinclair, so his name would shelter the exact kind of woman the world thought had nothing. In the front hall, she hung a single photograph, an empty wall in an old house, taken the day she walked out with a baby and a sealed envelope. Beneath it, a small card in her own writing. Some spaces feel better when the past is removed. She kept the envelope, too, opened now, framed beside her father's photograph, where every mother who walked through that door could see it. She had walked out of Terrence Bishop's life with nothing anyone could see. She walked into her own with everything, and every mother who had ever slept on that bench had a door now and a name and a warm room, because a man once looked at the most powerful woman he would ever meet, holding his own daughter in the cold, and called her